Hi, morning and welcome to the Outperforming the Environment series. This is, I think, the fifth video.
Yeah.
The fifth video in a long series that we're going to be bringing you, where we discuss how to outperform the environment, how to succeed during these times that we're living in today. And what we're going to be talking about today is what will have happened when we suddenly start producing the results that we don't want. And we're going to go through a very simple framework and a very interesting concept where we're going to just discuss how it is so painfully apparent the small, seemingly insignificant mistakes that we make as humans, as business people, and the catastrophic effects that it has on the results that we produce, that we enjoy. And prior to switching on the video camera, we've had some very interesting discussions, and I found it fascinating. So I hope that this is going to fascinate you as well, and that it's going to, more importantly, give you the tools that you need to understand how relatively easy it is to outperform your environment if you have the right tools, and if you understand that by doing certain things in a certain way, amazing results can be achieved. And the results that you enjoy, that you experience, the environment that you see even, is a direct result of you and your thinking. Yeah, so Simon, let's get them into this lesson. Okay?
Yes, I like the way you said when you do certain things in a certain way. I think this is one of the critical things that are important to talk about. That when we produce results, the results we produce are coming from us doing certain things in certain ways. So if we want to change the results that we are getting, then we need to change the way we are doing things. It's not something that is very difficult, but the most challenging thing is to become to a point of awareness, where you become aware, first of all, that I'm not producing the results that I want, and secondly, becoming aware of the certain way that you have to do your things, so that you begin again to produce the results that you don't want. And talking about outperforming the environment, just to clarify, we are here not to dismiss the point that in the environment it will change, and we can find ourselves in very difficult environments. That's not the point. The point is, we are saying we must expect that no matter what we are doing, especially in business, we must expect that from time to time we're going to hit into turbulent economic environments. And also, the other challenge that we are facing is, as we go into the 21st, 22nd, 23rd century, is that the rate of change in the environment is increasing very fast. So the point is, we must be able to have that capacity and continuously build that capacity to make sure that we are able to outperform the environment. Because without this kind of concept idea of saying that the major success factor for continuously producing results we want in the 21st, 22nd and 23rd centuries going forward is no longer the ability to rely on our past experiences or our past knowledge. It's now the ability to outthink the environment, outperform the environment. Because if we don't outperform the environment, then it means that we are always going to be reacting. We become victims. And already, most companies are already becoming victims of the environment. Not because they are not intelligent, but they are lacking the correct mental handles with which to understand the environment, actually have the ideas and the tools to begin to get into the position where they begin to develop that power and capacity to outperform the environment. So today we are going to talk about this idea.
I think it's important, just to add on to what you're saying, is if you look at successful business people, successful businessmen 20 years ago, physically,
yes,
just getting to the basics now. If you look at them physically, the successful ones then and the successful ones now physically are very, very different.
Yes.
In the old days, health was not an overly important thing in business.
Yes.
Whereas today, you look at the really successful, the progressive businesses, the millionaire, the billionaire businesses, those guys have placed a lot of emphasis on their own mental and physical health.
Exactly.
And because of that, they have the energy to deal with this rapidly changing environment that we have to work in these days.
Exactly.
And I see it in all the businesses and the business people that I work with.
Yes.
You can see the the people that are more conscious and aware of their energy levels, which is a result of your mental and physical health,
Exactly.
are infinitely more successful than the people that are not paying attention to those areas.
Exactly.
So, this outperforming the environment is not simply about one thing or another. It's a complete recipe.
Exactly.
And it's all about understanding that we have the power
Yes.
to outperform our environment, or to not, yes, to outperform it,
Yes.
and by doing that, to not become a product of our environment,
Exactly.
but rather influence
Exactly.
everything that's around us and create the environment we need
Precisely.
to produce the results that we do want, as opposed to what we don't want.
Precisely. What we are saying is the first environment that we need to focus on before we start talking about the external environment, because when you talk about the environment, most people rush into thinking about the external environment, the economy. The first environment that we must outperform is our own mental environment. That is the inside thing. I always say this, Brendan, that the most difficult of our challenges and the most rewarding of our goals are heavily surrounded by heavily armed enemies. That's the whole idea. If you've got a goal that is very rewarding for you, and that whole goal is more complex, it's surrounded by a lot of enemies. Those enemies, most of them, about 15, 16 of them, they are inside there. So your whole idea is, if you want to overcome that challenge, or you want to overcome that, get that goal, you have first of all to fight those enemies that are surrounding your goal or your challenge. And those enemies are inside there. So that environment that is internal is the one that first we have to clear of all these enemies, so that we'll be able to get our goals or solve our problems much easier. So this is the concept, like what you are saying. So the mental environment, we're talking about a lot of things that we have talked about. The emotional factors, for example, they are a critical part of the environment. You cannot outperform the environment when your internal environment is a toxic, emotional. Emotional toxicity is one of the most critical factors that destroy businesses, even CEOs. When you start seeing most business that start crumble, they don't start crumbling outside, they start crumbling inside the minds of the leaders. There are emotional triggers that happen there when you find somebody who has got a positive minded, who has a lot of energy, and then suddenly something happens, it triggers a whole set of different emotions, which are normally negative, toxic emotions. And one of the things we've been talking about here is people don't realize that emotions either suck energy or they release energy. So all negative emotions, one of the critical factors that is so dangerous about negative emotions is that they suck energy. So you will not have enough physical and mental energy when you are in a negative emotional state. All the energy is sucked by those negative emotions.
That is a hugely critical point that we need to just focus on just briefly. Is when you are the leader, you are the CEO or the leader of a team, and you have this negative emotion, this draining energy.
Yeah.
What are you doing to your team? You're draining them of energy.
Exactly.
You're telling them, I need all of these results, but I'm taking all of your energy because I'm so mentally slothful or unfit mentally, that I'm going to take all of your energy and then blame you for everything that we don't achieve. Because I've taken the fuel out of your tank.
Exactly. And the challenge is, like what you are saying, emotions, they are contagious. One of the things that you can't fake a human mind is emotional expression. So if you are a leader and you have got a team, you don't even need to tell your team that you are in a bad emotional state or you are swimming in toxic emotions mentally. It just shows. And the sensitivity of the brain to emotional issues is so high that even when you try to smile, there's always under this very hypersensitive sensors that will sense beyond what you are trying to express, and that will tell your team the exact emotional state in which you are, and that triggers. You have highlighted a very, very important point that most leaders don't realize. You start if you are in a negative emotional state, automatically what you do is you also transmit that state to everyone that you come into contact with. And emotional factors don't have to be those drastic emotional changes to create problems. Even small, mild changes in mood, they've got a drastic effect on people's energy, on people's capacity to make decisions. So this is one critical element that is so critical that normally when you talk about outperforming the environment, some CEOs may take it like we're just talking about something that has no scientific basis. But the bottom line is, even those mild emotional states, emotional changes, moods, they've got serious impact on decision making. And if you are a leader, one of the critical functions of every leader is to make decisions. Those decisions will drive your organization. Decisions drive results. Decisions determine the direction in which your organization is going to go. It's not just the strategy, but also your decisions. So all these things are very, very critical when you talk about having to outperform your internal environment. So your ability to overcome and to make sure that you have got the right internal environment by dealing with all those enemies I've talked about, that create a lot of chaos in your mind, is one of the first critical levels or types of environment that you have to outperform before you are actually going to succeed in outperforming the environmental challenges that you find out there that we call the economic environment.
Yeah, I think it's huge, and I think, like we're talking about getting away from the results that you don't want. And if you're going to do that, you have to grow into something different than you are now if you're experiencing results that you don't want. And if we go back to nature, because I always like to simplify things and paint a little picture. Like a plant, for a plant to produce a flower, it must change.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes,
it has to change. Something in that plant
exactly.
must change, and then a flower is created and it's beautiful and it looks nice.
Yes.
That flower also has a finite time. When that's finished, the flower goes away, the plant remains, but it behind the scenes is creating another flower.
Exactly.
And that flower may have now created some babies.
Exactly.
Some new leaders to come up.
Precisely.
And this is something that's very important with the concept of change, because we as humans, and the older we get, the more resistant we become to change.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was reading something this morning and thinking about today's show, and thinking that it's very important that we mention this: change or growth cannot happen without change. So get over that idea that change is bad, because change is absolutely necessary, especially in our current environment that we're living in today. Wherever you are in the world, it's the same. Rapid change.
Exactly.
And the people that are resisting that change are becoming obsolete more and more rapidly.
Exactly.
So what we're also talking about today, I'm just going to skip ahead there, is we're also talking about your strategy. If your strategy does not change, you sentencing yourself and your business, you're talking in the business sense, to death.
Exactly.
It's like a suicide note. If you take a 5-year-old strategy and try and implement it today, unless that strategy was way futuristic when it was created, it is not a strategy that you're writing, it's a suicide note.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
It is.
There's no better way of saying it.
It is, So what's the critical thing, like Brandon, what he said is, most people want to understand like what will have happened when we say, when we start producing results that we don't want. Remember, we have said there are 3 critical factors that are critical that lead to the results that we produce. Most people have got this equation of saying environment is equal to results. And it's a very fatal equation. This is one equation that creates problems for most people, especially in business, where they just relate their results directly to the environment. So when they are no longer getting the results that they want, they say, no, it's the environment that is creating problems. The actual truth is there are 3 critical factors that interact in a very dynamic way to produce any result that we want. The first one is you. When I'm talking about you, I can talk in terms of you in about 4 different dimensions. It's you as an individual, or it can be you as a team, or it can be you as an organization, it can be you as a business, it can be you as an economy. So that you can change in terms of what is meant, but you is critical. Then the next one is the actual environment in which you are trying to produce your results. And then the third one is your strategic power. Okay. The strategic power also includes your strategy. Yeah. But in terms of changes, when we say that we are no longer producing the results that we want, the most important thing that normally happens is one of the three variables that we have talked, at least one, if one of the three changes in the negative sense, you start producing results that you don't want. That's one. If there's a negative change in you, there's a negative change in the environment, or there's a negative change in your strategy, then automatically what you are going to get is what? Is your negative results. You will start producing results that you don't want. Right. But then the critical factor is, normally, what happens also is we can have problems where the changes in results are being triggered by changes in the environment.
This is the most common problem, isn't it?
Exactly,
Simon?
it is.
We were talking about it earlier. The most common problem when your business starts, when the results start being undesirable results, when things are not going well, and in any area of life, for that matter.
Exactly.
The fact is that the environment has changed, and this is something that we have very little control over, very little influence over.
Exactly.
But what we are able to do, if we are clever about it, is we need to adapt ourselves and our strategy to the environment.
Exactly.
But what happens is, like what we were talking about this earlier, is that most people, 95% of people, and we all at some point or another fall into that 95% bracket, allow the environment to produce, or we become a product of our environment, rather than changing ourselves and our strategies to influence the environment.
Exactly. So what normally happens is your results now, once that happens, the environment is changed. It can change anytime. You can't control the environment, basically the external environment. Even your mental environment, if you are not trained to condition yourself, that your mental environment doesn't just change, or willy-nilly, and you don't control it. It's very important also that is a critical area of my mentioning, that you are able to condition yourself and to control your mental environment. But the external environment is what normally people start thinking about. It has changed, so the results are coming back. But then if you come to you, so if the environment changes and you don't change and you remain the same, that is what I'm saying. And then your strategy and your strategic power remains the same. It doesn't change. Automatically what's going to happen is your results will swing in the negative. Because now there is no alignment between your strategy and the environmental conditions. So you're out of alignment. You're out of balance. So your results automatically will start to change. Because you are trying to do the same things, using the same strategic power, in an environment that has changed for the negative. So there's no correctional change that is happening. So it's a very important factor. And the only things that you can change, like what we've always been saying here, is you can change. You've got the power and the control to change, you as an individual, a team, organization, a business, or economy. And you've got the power to shift your strategic power, so that the total combination of your change and the change in your strategic power is sufficient enough to make sure that you prevail and continue producing the kind of results that you want in that environment that has changed.
Thank you. I think, Simon, on that note, I think we can sum up, because I think that you've captured it perfectly there.
Exactly.
And I think, like, we live in Zimbabwe, in Harare, and we are in the midst of economic it's a downward spiral in our economy, and it has been for a few years. Now, I've had the privilege of working with some of the most progressive business minds in the country. And the one thing that is common amongst all of them is their ability to focus and change themselves, their internal environment. Every single one of them, that's what they've got in common.
Exactly.
And I'm talking about multi-million-dollar companies here. The leadership change themselves, they adapt themselves in advance of the environment changing. Their strategies are crazy strategies for what the environment is saying the strategy should be. None of their strategies are that would have worked 2 years ago.
Exactly.
And none of their strategies will work. The current ones won't work next year.
Exactly.
And these guys are aware of it, and they've
Exactly.
built their teams, their businesses,
Yeah.
their whole companies around this thing. It's you, your environment, and your strategic power. And once you understand that, if you sort out yourself and your strategy, your strategic power,
Yeah.
you can not be influenced or not be affected negatively by the environment.
Yeah.
And I think that's the gist of what we wanted to say in this video.
Exactly. Yeah, just to sum up, like what you've said, is the three things. Because most people don't understand when you say you need to change, when the environment changes. There are a lot of things that you find. You go into organizations, the team has not changed in the way they think. They've got the same level of skill, the same types of skill. The skills that you need to perform in a stable environment are completely different from the skills that you need to perform effectively in a chaotic environment. And most of the teams that we find in some organizations, they are not trained to perform effectively in a turbulent economic environments. They don't have the capacity because they've not been trained to operate in that particular environment. And most of the business people that we meet, some of them, they've no clue that you cannot just take a person who has got skills that were developed for operating in a stable environment, and you expect the same level people to perform without changing in the skills. And then, like what you have said, the next thing is how do you do your strategy in a turbulent environment? Because it's also not just about the strategy, it's about how you come up with a strategy. Most people, they come up with the strategy using exactly the same methods of strategic planning, formulating strategies they were using in a stable environment. But the environment has changed, so those methods of coming up with strategy will no longer work in a different environment. So this is one of the things.
It's that round hole, square peg.
Exactly.
It will not fit. Stop
will not
trying
fit.
to make it fit.
Yeah,
if it's
exactly.
not working,
Yes.
change the strategy.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's all. So it's you, environment, and strategy. When they're in alignment, you get the results that you want, regardless of the environment.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Simon, and thank you for watching. We'll be bringing you another very interesting show next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
You're welcome.